All right, you're asking for it, so here it is. Listen to this.
I want you folks laughing at we partners pod, kid. You understand? We in here drinking, singing, swinging, all that shit, dog. Get sweating.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the 133rd episode of the Drinking Partners Podcast. Yes, this is our Tony Dorsett episode because we're PA born,
Nice.
PA bred, PA legends. That's what we do. And Tony Dorsett won the Heisman one year and then won Rookie of the Year the next year. So back-to-back best ofs, and that's what we're going for right now, right? Back-to-back. And I'm half of your hosting tandem, Ed Bailey. I'm joined as always with my co-host, Dave Bracey. Say what up to the people.
What's good with you people? We are Drinking Partners. If you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and Google Play under Drinking Partners. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod. 132 episodes, 133 episodes, man. We've been asking you.
I just said it.
133 episodes, man. We've been asking you. We'll continue to ask you. And please, hop on iTunes, rate and review. That's how we let others know that we're doing well. That's how we know what we're doing well, and that's how we continue to do well. So please, hop on iTunes, rate and review.
Yeah, man, you love us. When you see us in public, you tell us you love us. Now just go on the internet and tell the world. You know what I mean?
Speaking of 33, Tony Dorsett from the Quip, and tonight we got T-Road from the Quip.
That's good. That's a good. All right,
So
I ain't even put two and two together.
yeah.
T-Row probably be hanging out with Dorsett. They probably be going golfing or something.
True, we know everybody, man.
Yeah. So, always in lieu of rates and reviews, we do take shots of Hennessy. So if you see us out, give us a shot or give us a rated review online. That's dope. But we're not drinking Hennessy right now. It's too early.
A little too early, yeah. This is an early cast. We don't typically Saturday mornings, especially after a show, like that's a little rare.
An amazing show. We still got sleep in our eyes, but we got voodoo in our bellies. So shout out to them, man.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Voodoo. They're sponsoring the cast today. Appreciate them. Voodoo, in case you know, you ain't know, Voodoo has 3 PA locations, including Erie, Meadville, and Homestead. They just opened up like this huge facility up in Meadville, this huge warehouse. So shout out to them. Congratulations.
Big things.
Go out there and grab some of that because it is amazing brew.
It's employee owned, veteran operated. So you know what I mean. Got to support that. Support our troops. Support Voodoo.
Yes.
Support yourself.
Support Voodoo. Support our troops. Definitely support our troops. Like all of our troops, all of them. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Dave was trying to make a point.
Just trying to. Yeah.
Also, if you get a chance, support Epicast, man. Like, if you're looking to get a podcast of your own, if you're looking to have your podcast sound better, if you're looking to promote an event, if you're looking for us to shout you out here on our award-winning podcast, shout out to Epicast, man. Go to www.epicastnetwork.com/services and tell them Drinking Partners sent you.
Yeah, true. I mean, get that hookup. If we got some events coming up, we got Hilltopolis. That's going to be crazy. That's September 22nd. We got a free festival. It's a free festival at Grandview Park. We got the cool kids coming in, PK Delay, Pet Zebra, Creatives Drink, and Give Camp.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
It's free.
It's free.
It's free.
Free fun. Cool kids. PK. Shout out to PK Delay. He was on Drinking Partners a couple weeks ago. Shout out to him, man. Doing big things.
Yeah, no, he's I'm mad I missed that whole
you were
conversation.
not here. Yeah, you were not here.
Oh, man.
That's why it went well, because we could argue about hip-hop. You weren't here. We can have real opinions.
I saw his video. Buzzy showed me that video, and he was talking about, like, suck my toes or some shit like that. I was like, yo, we got to have this fucker on. I have to ask him about this, man. But yeah, super talented kid, and like I said, the cool kids, and that's a free event on the 22nd. So nothing goes better with a great time than free.
And us, we'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be in the building.
And we also, if you
in the park
prior to the Hilltopolis, we'll be throwing a comedy show at Contra Theater as we do each month. Quincy Jones coming in the headline August 26th. Look out for information on that show, but always get your tickets at ContraTheater.ticketleap. It's going to be crazy, man.
Yeah, man. We got people coming in from everywhere. We got Chris Allen from D.C. We got Mark Caesar from Louisiana. We got Chanel Ali from New York. And we got Jared Berenstein from L.A. Coming in for that show. And that's That's gonna be a hell of a time, man. So that's August 26th, Comfort Theater, 20 minutes north. Hop on 79. I mean, about 20-minute ride, and you there. And as always, we have beer sponsors, so they'll be handing out free booze, and it's BYOB. So you bring whatever if for whatever reason you don't like the free things that we giving out, then hey, bring your own. It's we just want you to have a good time. Because we like to have a good time. I mean,
definitely love to have a good time. And speaking of good times, we had a great time last night. Man, that show was crazy. We're at Compton Theater this weekend, and we have our headliner here in the studio with us.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Tore the whole building down last night. Great time.
Yeah.
This gentleman, I'm a fan now. Like I'm a super fan now. Like just the energy he brings to the stage, it was crazy. I mean, but we have Mike Kaplan in the building. Say what up to the people.
Hey, what up, people? I said what you said.
You ain't say to thee.
Oh, I was saying it to them. What up to the people as well?
Was implied.
I'll do it all the... Guys, I'm really sorry that I screwed up this podcast.
No, you didn't. We screwed it up when we put it together.
No, you guys, whatever you do is the right thing because it's your podcast. And if I didn't live up to what you really wanted, I could have just said, what up? And that would have been clear that it was to people. There could be animals listening. What up? What up to the animals out there? Shout out. We tore down the building last night. They're putting it back up right now.
Yeah. I hope it's done in time.
Yeah. There's a show tonight, but it was as long as it's not raining, that's fine if the roof remains torn off.
We can do the show outside. Now, you brought a friend with you, a friend of yours, a friend of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We got John Dick in the building. Say what up, JD Winters.
How's everyone doing?
Oh, look at he's switching up because you here.
Yeah.
Now y'all polite.
Yeah. Oh shit. That is, yeah.
What would you ordinarily be like, John?
I would just yell profanities, and racial slurs.
Well, I guess it makes.
But I'm trying to put on airs for you, Mike.
You really did a good job. You had me fooled.
That's his coffee talking. Once he gets into this bourbon, he'll.
Oh no, I'm into the bourbon.
Oh, okay.
The bourbon.
It's mixed with the coffee.
In the coffee. My bourbon's in my tea.
You very perceptive, as you can see. Like when I said, "Say what up to the people," your response, like you were a linguistics major or something like that. Like,
I did.
How does that influence your comedy? Because like when I first saw you, I mean, the act outs and the energy that you brought was amazing. But then now, like listening to you and conversing with you, like I see the linguistic side of it.
Yeah,
like,
it
is that
makes
how
sense.
you got? Is that how you got into comedy, or how did that begin?
A good question. I will answer it now. That's what a good question does. It provokes an answer. Just stalling. Here's the thing is, I feel like my whole life I have been like caring about, how things are said and like the reasons behind and like the rules of like, I remember in English class, like in elementary school, I didn't love like reading comprehension questions. I like reading, but I didn't like having to read things that I didn't care about. But I did love like diagramming sentences. I liked knowing like what the parts of speech were. Like I was more of like a math kid, but it was like the math of language, which is sort of what linguistics is. So that it's sort of been in me always. And just like sometimes that is where jokes come from. So I think that it's just, the idea, the comedy that I do sometimes and the interest in linguistics are both symptoms of the ultimate disease that is me.
The ultimate disease? Nah, I mean, listen, if you can speak well, that's good.
Oh yeah,
we can't.
It's like, of course. I mean, when I say that I'm a disease, I don't mean that I'm, sick or dying because, like cancer is cancer survives, cancer wins. People like every battle that people have with cancer generally. I'm sorry if you are losing one right now. This is, I got insensitive. But the point is, I'm a cancer and I'll murder you.
But see, that's cool because
with language,
you're so good with words. You could get insensitive and then bring it back. Like he's like the politician where you go say some fuck shit, but nobody else knows what you really just said.
Yeah, like so it must be fucking awful dating you because you can't win it. Because I mean, like you look at language like math and there's a lot of logic in that, and somebody has, like if the equation doesn't add up at the end, you're just gonna pick that apart, and the other person is like, I'm not even fucking talking about this sentence.
Hold on, don't let a secret out.
Yeah.
You have a great joke about that exact concept.
Do I?
Yeah, it's I dated a woman who wanted to be dominated, so I played her in Scrabble.
It's true though. I will say, that is happening now is not it's not the way that I conduct myself in a relationship for the very reason that I do want my relationships to be successful.
Is that
So that's-
something that you had to learn how
It-
to do?
it is
Because
a-
I mean, I would imagine that you having this skill, you just did it, and then you realize like, oh, that's shitty.
100%. Like 10 years ago, I was dating a girl who I mark as like the person. It was a good relationship. We were in it for a couple of years, but we fought, and I realized like sometimes when you fight, it's about important things, or sometimes when you're fighting, like it's about you're feeling something and the other person is feeling something, but you're not fighting about those things. You're fighting about whatever surface thing sets you off because you're in the mood, and so. That was a thing that we'd get into fights, and I was like, I could win the argument, the surface thing, but what was really going on
It
further
still
deep
wouldn't
down.
solve anything.
No, and so she would want to be like, "Can we just stop arguing?" And I would be like, "No, we have to keep going until
We have
one
to
of us
resolve this.
is right
Yeah.
and both of us are sad." Is what I
Yeah.
ultimately realized. I'd rather, because I'd rather try to assess how important a topic actually is, because they say tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Like
Which never happens.
you can never like. Do you know how much truth there is? There's a lot of it. You can't tell all of it.
Yeah.
So you have to always focus on what is the truth that is valuable and important and relevant to the situation right now. And it might be like lose the battle and win the war of not fighting.
That's very mature of you.
I was
'cause
about to-
I'm never trying to lose the battle, especially when I come in equipped to win all the battles. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you
But-
can direct or steer the conversation in any way you want. You know what I mean? Like shout out to you for that.
Oh, I thank you. If you want to win all the battles, the one battle that you'll lose is not getting into battles. Like,
Yeah,
that's what I.
that really. That's at the end of the day, like, because I went through that myself. It was like I can win all of these arguments, but I'm like, but we're just going to keep getting into it because this the underneath isn't being solved or whatever. So I'm just like, what, I'm gonna just. For me, it's more or less like if I have a behavior or whatever, I want to first get down to the behavior. And a lot of people, when they speak, they're speaking, say, emotion or whatever, the top or whatever. And it's like let's make it get to the root of the problem, and then just be like, what, if I can change it, I will. If not, then fuck it.
I mean, I don't know. The best relationships are about keeping score. I've found.
Way to keep it real.
Point
what I mean?
to John. You're winning this relationship.
Some men put a notch in their bedpost for when they sleep with another woman. I'm just like, I won again. I won this argument, semantically or otherwise.
On his tombstone, John Dick Winter, relationship champion, never married.
Yeah, I mean, arguments.
I'm in the middle of a 10-year divorce. What are you talking about?
Every relationship you have is a relationship, no matter what the dynamic. It is a relationship. So I'm in relationships with tons of women right now. Like that's how I am. But my girl hopefully is not listening to this episode.
I'll call her later.
She's on top of it right now.
Yeah,
What are you
well, I'm
talking
getting
about?
messages right now. What I'm gonna do?
Well, there's
Here's
like
what
a there's like a
shit is-
7-second delay.
Nah, that's cool. Okay, so I'll get a message in a minute, and then what I'll do is, in that 1 minute, I'm going to contract Mike to argue my point, the validity of what I'm saying.
there it
Well,
is.
There we go.
obviously,
The
you're
lawyer.
an entertainer. This is art. This is not
Whoa!
necessarily.
Don't put it on the place that I'm gonna argue with. Like, come on, man. That's where your linguistics is in law. You know what I mean? Like, you got to learn the law.
I feel like you could contract that out. I feel like you could contract like, hey yo, like Mike, look, she said this, da 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 da. This is the situation. Hey, look, man,
There's
hit her
new
with
business
that.
for Mike if comedy doesn't work out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do whatever people pay me to do. So if you want me to be your relationship
that's
coach,
loose. That's pretty loose.
I mean, I guess I'll put some specifications on it as need be. If I want to do the
Case
thing,
by case basis.
if I want to do the thing that you want me to do, and you want to give me money to do the thing I want to do, then I'll do that thing.
What is it that you originally wanted to do? Because I mean, not only do
Correct
I not
everybody.
need any.
Just be right.
Well, there you go.
That was the original thing. That's not where I'm at now.
Because that's a unique.
Let me correct you.
That is a unique entry point into comedy, coming from a linguistics background.
Oh,
you don't
sure.
normally meet individuals who have master's degrees in general, but then
That's true.
in
Most
linguistics-
people.
Oh, you're a master?
I am both vernacular-wise and degree. Yes, I got a degree. I'm a good, what is it called? Communicator. So, yes, I went to a lot of school. I mostly just kept going to school because I didn't want to get a real world job. I did start playing the guitar when I was in high school, and that was my initial like dream. I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I wrote songs, I sang them, so I achieved that goal. But I wanted that to be like what I did as a living. So, but I also knew that wasn't. I think my dad is was sort of a rational, like logical dad-like being. Maybe not everybody's dad is like this, but to me, I would be like, I want to be a musician. I want to. And my parents are actually both musicians and music teachers though, so they had like jobs.
Yeah.
It was art, but it was an art job that had a retirement plan and a weekly salary, and you knew where your gigs were every day, every year. You get tenured. So I guess sort of that's where my initial that's where my life came from, is like structuring art. They're like, you want to do art, but you want to know you also want to get paid. That's not not the way my dad put it. You want to do art and get paid, son.
Did they sell out classes?
I mean, it was just for me, personal one-on-ones, tutorials. But yeah, so in high school, I started playing guitar and I loved it. And I in college, would play at coffee shops and, talent shows or whatever. And I was but I would talk to my dad and be like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And he'd be like, but what is your backup plan? And that's what, I thought about maybe becoming a teacher. Maybe I had a psych major, so maybe becoming a psychologist or a counselor. So there was a lot of things that I could have done. Like growing up playing Monopoly, my family was like, you're really good at counting that money. You could be a banker, you could be a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant.
Yeah.
So I knew maybe when I was like, I'm good at math. I like multiplying things. I could be an accountant. But the original thing that I felt passionate about being was a musician. To answer your question of how did I get into comedy?
Then you went the more stable route of stand-up comedy.
I mean, the thing, I was playing music around Boston where I was in school for a couple years, in college. Then when I started grad school to be like, I'm just going to give myself more time to get discovered. That was my dream interpretation of how, if I could look back on it, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's obviously I with quotes around it. I knew that wasn't.
I love that phrase, and give myself more time to get discovered.
Yeah.
I just need someone to walk in here and do my career for me. I might as well get an advanced degree while I'm at it.
I did a show once at the Comedy Studio in Boston is where I started, and I started in 2002, and so around 2007-ish, I was hosting the Thursday night show with my buddy Micah Sherman. And one night, Louis C.K. was in town filming a movie with, I think, Jennifer Garner. And she came to see him perform with Ben Affleck.
Was that the one with Ricky Gervais?
Yeah, The Invention of Lying, I think.
Oh, I love that.
Oh man, that movie's so good.
So that movie, they were shooting that movie, and so Louis, the very first show that I ever did, the very first comedy show I ever did was at the Comedy Studio, and Louis was on it, right around I was still pursuing music, so I was only doing songs. It was 1999 at the Comedy Studio, and I just remembered. So Louis would come back there and perform sometimes when he was in town. And so I remember all the comedians were like, Ben Affleck is watching our comedy show. And so Louis went on first or second, and then he and Ben and Jennifer all left. And all the other the other 8 comedians who were yet to, the comedian who went on right after they left was like, but I thought that Ben Affleck would see me and take me away from all this. So that was and he was joking, but I think when you're starting out, you do have a flawed idea of how show business works.
Yeah, how everything works.
Exactly.
You're just oh, I'm just gonna be really funny. You don't even know how many funny people are out there or whatever. You're I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna just work, hit the mics and and then I'm gonna just get discovered because this is, And
so that was my goal, to get discovered. I was like, I don't care how many people there are. My joke about how pirate and parrot sound the same is gonna take this world by storm. It didn't do that yet, but it's still working on it. But I got, I forget what the question is, but did I answer it?
Question doesn't matter.
So, I mean, how did you, coming up, because you're in a highly saturated market, in Boston and New York and Jersey with on the, the East Coast or whatever. How did you separate yourself?
That's a good question. And here's the thing. There's an a cappella group that I listened to a long time ago and saw called the House Jacks. And if I remember correctly, do you guys ever listen to, so there's a vocal percussionist who's basically a beatboxer. Mm-hmm. So it's there's no instruments, but it's guys singing, harmonizing, not just guys, anybody, any genders, construct, everything's fine. Whoever, anybody wants to sing, dogs. And so there's like a beatboxer basically like laying down percussion tracks like live while they're performing or recorded. This guy learned to be a vocal percussionist by listening to other like groups, other guys who did it. And I remember hearing a story that he listened to one track, one song that had like overlaid, like, you know, the percussionist like didn't just lay down one track, lay down like 4 tracks to sound like super, you know, as complicated as possible, as cool as possible. This guy listening and learning thought it was just one guy. So he's like, I'm going to try to, if that guy could do it, I can do it. So he learned how to sound like 4 dudes, not because he didn't know that he shouldn't have been able to do that. He didn't know that that could have been if somebody told him, oh, that's 4 people, that's impossible for one person to do. He'd been like, oh, I guess I won't try. But he's like, well, if he thought a thing happened, so he thought that he could do it, and then he could do it. Wow. So I guess, and that similarly, and that's how I separated myself in Boston from all the other comedians. I did the impossible.
Sounded like 4 comedians. He was an incel comedian,
yeah.
a racial comedian. He was a redneck comedian.
Yes.
All one time.
I listened to 4 comedians at once, and I was like, that's one guy. But the actual analogy, the reason that I thought of it is that, like, you were talking about, like, the idea of there being so many comedians, the idea of, like, you know, New York, like, where I live now, has probably the most, you know, densely populated, you know, comedy scene, at least in the country, maybe in the world. Boston, you know, any city, any like big city that's not like New York or LA will also have, you know, a bunch of clubs, a bunch of comedians. There's probably like hundreds of comedians or people, you know, striving to be comedians actively in Boston. Like if you look at the open mics and the people starting out. And so I feel like I didn't think about it like the same way this guy didn't think about like, is this impossible? If you're like, of course, the odds that any one person, you know, there's 7 billion people or a million people in Boston or whatever it is, however many millions in your city or hundreds of thousands. If you're like, what are the odds that if I start comedy, will be successful? Be like, most human beings don't become successful in comedy, but most human beings also don't try comedy. Most human beings don't put in the work, the time. Like, and it's not just about work and time. You also need maybe something. But I think work and time is the thing that is the most. That's what it is. It's putting in. That's the thing that you can control. It's the only thing. You might have some talent. You might get lucky. Like talent and luck are valuable things that you can't control. Work and time is the only thing that you can control. And so I feel like starting out, you might think that it's better to start out somewhere where there's like not a lot of comedians, you know, maybe like you'll get on stage more, which is good. But you also won't have like the level, like the higher level, like all the things like of people that you need to, if you're competing with more people and if you're competing with better people, then you have to get better. So that's what starting out in a city like Boston was like. And you're like, because I thought I was good to begin with. I was like, I think I believed in myself. My parents told me I could do anything, and I didn't realize that they were just. That's who knows. But I think that they were wrong. But
parents are always supportive the entire time once you become successful.
Oh, sure.
Like once you become successful, they've been supporting me since day one. Not necessarily.
But yeah, I had confidence more than anything else in the beginning. And I'm glad that I did, because that eventually, you know, it's kind of like a fake it till you make it, but I didn't even know that I was faking it.
Well, it's not until retrospect when you're like, God damn, I was terrible. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Like, that's growth.
Yes. So that's what happened.
How did that approach conflict with your upbringing? Like, so if your parents were teaching stability, now they were in the arts realm, so you had that part of it, but again, you talked about the stability that they had. Like my parents, when I got in, I already had a job with benefits and stuff like that. So like when I'm getting in, like, and I'm not even just full time yet, so I still work.
Sure.
So like, I don't even know what they really think of comedy, you know, honestly, because I can still support myself through, you know, my job. But like, if you go in full time and you have your parents who are talking about stability, like, how do they show their support? And then like, how do you feel like it's kind of in contradiction to your entire upbringing, sort of?
Yes, that is 100% correct. I think that what it is. I mean, I do think that human beings in general, we are naturally creative. Like most people, you know, when you're a kid, you're drawing or you're singing or you're dancing or you're doing something because it's uninhibited and it's like nobody's telling you not to. Right. Like, but as an adult, you eventually, quote unquote, grow up and people are like, well, you can't just dance and sing and art all day. I mean, you can, but also you do, if you want, you need to do something either separate to feed yourself, or if you can ultimately get this to be the thing that feeds yourself. Like, I guess, I didn't think about it necessarily explicitly in these terms, but what I was doing was kind of scientifically, like, I was in college and like that's the path. You know, I went to high school. most of the kids that went to my high school went to college. My parents were teachers. They're like, yes, we went to college. You can go to college. Like, we have a college fund. Like, so the path was sort of set for me to get there. And then the goal was, I was raised by like mainstream, my society, like, or at least, like suburban white middle class society. Like, I didn't know that there were so many other, like genres and environments and, upbringings and versions of life. And, obviously I still don't know everything, but like getting into comedy, I met people who like, oh, you didn't go to college? Oh, you didn't finish high school? Oh, we are all like, there's, people richer than me, there's people poorer than me. And I knew that intellectually, but so I was just on the narrow path that I was on, which I thought was the only thing initially. And then I was like, oh, like I do love this thing. I do love creating. I do love making music. Like my goal, my dream would be to get to a place where that's everything. But I know that it doesn't happen overnight. I know that for most people, it's not just you get discovered. So I was like, how can I use, the skills that I've been, imparted with, to get to the place, like, how do I get from here to there? And so that's why I did go to grad school. I applied to grad schools to be like, I'm going to give myself more time to be in Boston, because I liked the scene. I was learning about the comedy scene. There were more places to go to get up. So I'm like, I know that I'm not getting paid immediately for it.
How long have you been in comedy before grad school? Like, when did you get into comedy? Like, when did you?
So here's the chronology is I graduated college undergrad in 2000. My first performance, my senior year of college is when I started trying to perform music around Boston. And so then that was what I was doing for a couple years. And then, so I went to start a grad school in 2000 and then started really pursuing comedy, like shifting, being like, oh, I like talking in between the songs even more than the song. So I'm like, gonna do fewer songs, more talking. And I just found, maybe it's because I found more comedy open mics than music open mics. There's just like so many places to do comedy in Boston. So I was like, okay, so I'm in grad school. I was living as a resident assistant, so I like lived on campus for free, and they gave me a little stipend. So like I didn't need as many jobs to bring in money for rent because rent was taken care of. And so I just like worked at the Barnes & Noble cafe. Like I made coffee for people for a couple years. I was studying linguistics. I eventually did get like an internship that paid a little bit as well. So I had just a bunch of jobs over the summer. I'd be a summer camp counselor, teaching music. And so all through the year, I was like living at BU for free, working these jobs and being like, so I'm like, money is coming in. Like I wasn't asking my parents for anything. So like the joke that I have is that my dad, he eventually did start like supporting me in comedy when he realized he wouldn't have to be supporting me out of comedy.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Day one for him is different from day one for you.
Yes.
They just want you to secure the bag first. Yeah, I mean, once you secure the bag, you could do whatever else. Yeah, I mean, pursue your dreams, but pay your rent.
And so also like on the surface, I had a way of paying my rent, and I was also still quote unquote in school. Like that was the culture that I was raised in was like a value. Education was valued. It was a valuable thing that I was doing. Like usually education is valuable because of the like in the minds of, let's say my parents or, the older generations are like, go to school so that you can get a job. Yeah. It's not, the school is the means to get to the end of, which is the job, which can get you the money. There is no end ultimately, but that's the way people are like, you go to school so you can get a job. For me, I was going to school so that while at least I had, it wasn't that I was like, I'm going to have cover, for my, like, cause not that I don't care what my parents think at this point. I'm like, at this point, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I'm in my 20s. I am making enough money to support myself. I have, I get it. I do. I'm like, it's sort of unorthodox the way all these things were being pieced together, being like, oh yeah, some money from Barnes & Noble, some money from this internship, some money from Boston University, some money from summer camp. But I was like, I have enough. And then,
I mean, I think that you find that that's a commonality in a lot of, the successful, artists are the folks that are able to kind of like think outside of and like piece things together in order to keep moving forward. Like,
yeah. And if I hadn't started making money from comedy, then I would have at some point reevaluated. But like, I also knew, so like, while it is quote unquote risky, if you just look at the overall numbers to try to do art for a living, to try to be a musician or a comedian or any creative, entertaining endeavor or visual or whatever, but the way I didn't feel like I wasn't just leaping off a cliff. I was like, edging. I'm like, here's a handhold. And so little by little, like I was like, I've heard that to get better at comedy, you do comedy. I've heard, to get better at anything, the more you do it, the better chance you have of getting better, the better chance you have of getting recognition, the better chance you have of getting paid for it. So like I started really pursuing comedy in 2002, and I think probably like late 2003, at least maybe a year to a year and a half, maybe 2 years later was like my first paid gig. I got eventually the first years of comedy are just about amassing something to be like, hey, I can do comedy for 10 minutes. I can do comedy for 15 minutes. Will you give me money to do comedy for 15 minutes? And so like somebody did. And then like 6 months later, somebody else did. And then 2 months later, somebody else did. And then eventually, like you only have to start once, and then you have, you can get it on tape and be like, look, I did comedy. I can do comedy.
Yeah.
If you hire me, I can do this comedy.
Yeah.
And so it just got denser and denser till eventually, like 5 or 6 years later, I got like a college booking agent. And so then they would book me to perform at colleges around just, sort of all over the country. And that paid me enough that in 2008, I was like, I don't need enough money came in the last year from colleges and other than sort of, one night comedy things like featuring at clubs, opening at clubs. Like I wasn't really headlining anywhere except for the colleges yet. But it's like, this year was good enough that I don't need to be in school anymore. So I graduated. I'd been, I had been like not writing a thesis like for 5 years. I was just living for free at the school, doing the job of resident assistant so that I could continue to, and so eventually.
I like your hustle, man.
My getting discovered process took 7 years.
It took them 7 years to find you.
I mean, it took me seven years to become me,
Yeah.
Like I think, started in 2002, like 2009 is when I first, like when I recorded my first, full length, album.
Okay.
And that's, by that point I was like, oh yeah, I have an hour of comedy that I was happy with at the time. I probably, I had an hour like 3 years in, but like everybody, like I could talk for an hour. But by that point, so that was it. Yeah, 2008 is when I really started, when I became a full-time comedian, and then now I still am one. But the point of getting from point A to point B, it's all gradual. It's like, and so that was the part that like really gelled with my upbringing experience, which was sort of more like measured and controlling and focused on stability to be like, I'm here and I'm going to take one step forward. And then once, the ground builds up in me, like I'm going to gather enough ground and keep building this mountain, whatever the analogy is. And so it's just step by step is how it worked for me. So I think if people ask me like, how do you become a full-time comedian? How do you get there? For me, it was important that I had all these flexible jobs. Like I was fortunate that like the job that I had at the internship was like, you can do 15 to 20 hours a week, but it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday, 4 hours a day. I could come in and do like Monday 10 hours, Tuesday 10 hours, and then go on the road from Wednesday to Sunday if I wanted to. Like they were cool with that. Like there was just, as long as you get the work done, you can do it. Whereas, so I feel like if you can get a flexible job or people that understand that you're going to be, maybe taking, some days off, some weeks off, some weekends, whatever it is. I mean, because that's the way you get better is just by doing it. Yeah. And so that was the thing that I learned. It is sort of, it's art, but it's a scientific sort of assessment of like, that's how 100% how you gain mastery. That's how you become anything is by doing.
You got to set yourself up.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Like I think more people are flipping college too. Like more people are flipping college. Like I think the conventional, like back in the day, the way they looked at it, like you said, where you go, you get this degree so that you can get a job. Now more people are like, well, I can take ownership of what I'm going to do. And maybe college is not just for this validation degree-wise. Maybe it's the networks that I get to build. Maybe it's the experiences that I get to get. Like, I don't know. It just seems like the view of college is a little different. I mean, I understand people are very methodical about pursuing degrees and things like that. There are some people like that. Some people, you meet a lot of people in college that's just in fucking college. Like, they're just in college. Some
people just stay in college until they're figuring out their life. Or they can stay in college cheap enough or whatever it is.
You're not at your mom's crib. There's an abundance of people your age.
It provides a structure and a place to be.
Sometimes you're not paying rent each month because you're staying on campus. Like,
and it does seem
I'm
like
mad I ain't flipped college. Like, that sounds dope as shit. Like,
can I tell you guys, I've never heard the expression to flip used in this way? Can you sincerely? This is.
I think he just made it up.
It's like a hustle. Like,
When you flip a house.
Yeah,
you flip a house. Like it's a.
You're making the college work for you financially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like when I say flipping college, it just basically means you're owning it. Like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do with it, and I'm using this as a vessel to make this happen.
I like it a lot.
Traditionally, you go to college, you pay them to better you, but then in your case and what he's saying, you go to college to get paid.
Which is, I mean, it is supposed to be in all the ways, like, you know, it's supposed to be a thing that helps you, but you are even before it gets to the place where it's quote unquote supposed to help you, you're making it help you sooner and better.
Right, because in college, like, how much of what you learn in college is really in the classroom?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, no, networking was the thing that I learned most, just being in that environment, just being in a different environment, being a minority for the first time. Like, I went from like a, half and half, like white and black school to like being 5%, and like that,
wow.
being in that environment and then having to like, network and then throwing parties and like, just the basic structures of production. I didn't even know I was doing it. I was just like, yeah, we're just having a great time. But
now that you have your life, you understand, like, looking back, these are the points that led you to learn what you wanted and know how to do it. For me, I think now, like, if I knew that I wanted to become a comedian before college, I might not have even gone to college because you don't quote unquote need college to become a comedian. There's no degree necessary to enter. You can just start. Like, I know people who started when they were 17.
Linguistics is a good one, though.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm happy that I have the experiences that I took really interesting classes. I'm glad that I was on scholarship and that I don't have debt, because that's the thing that college for a lot of people
is
huge. It's supposed to be a thing that helps you get money, but depending what you study, you might not even work in that thing. It might be like, there's lawyers I know who get into comedy and they're like, oh, I've got a lot of debt and I'm not at a corporate law. Like, you have to. I have friends who like became corporate lawyers because, like, I have to make enough. I have to do this thing that I don't want to do for 10 years so that eventually maybe I can do the work that I want to do, become like an environmental lawyer, become something that's more aligned with my passions.
Yeah, a lot of them become teachers. A lot of my friends are like, they got out, and no matter what degree it was just somehow they became a teacher.
You can be a teacher. Like, you could teach social studies and major in communications. Doesn't matter. Like, they don't give a fuck. Like,
I'm communicating the social studies to you.
Exactly. Like, they just need somebody to get in this classroom with these kids because their parents are at work. Like, that's pretty much what school is most times. Unless you pay like a lot for a different school, like, we basically babysit.
Ha ha ha. Are you a teacher?
No.
Oh yeah.
Nah, you can laugh at teachers.
I mean, my parents are teachers. I thought about being a teacher, and I think that what you're saying makes sense because there are, like, with a population growing like it is, which I don't know how much of it is coming from like children or people, but there's more. You hear things like I applied to Teach for America at one point. I didn't get it, but I know that people need teachers so much that they're like, even if you didn't study how to teach, like, as long as you're an adult,
knowledgeable and you have the skills of it, to like relay the message. I mean, like, yeah, like, and honestly, like, teachers have, teachers, nurses, and moms have the hardest fucking jobs on the planet, man. Like, I mean, just and they're the most like valuable, and they get shat on the most. Like, it's crazy. I mean,
my grandmother was a nurse, my dad was a teacher, my mom was a mom, and
you ever wash dishes before? It's not easy.
I did that.
You ever wash asses before? That's a whole diseased asses. Like, at that, like, there's no like the nursing thing, because like the doctor comes in for 5 minutes, is like, that's what that is, and then he walks out, and then the nurse
got to deal with it.
Yeah, the nurse got to. That's the one. If you live through any experience, it's because of the nurses. You know what I mean?
That'd be like if you had at a comedy show, you have the doctor comedian goes out and is like, okay, the audience seems to want jokes about this, and this. All right, thank you very much. I got paid a lot. And then the nurse comedians.
It's another hustle you have. You've been reading the minds and you got the psychology background. You got the linguistics. You've been hearing the conversations in the lobby.
That's hilarious.
This is my new job.
Yeah, if you just had a spectrum of comedic styles waiting backstage that were your subsidies of your comedy, and just go and read a crowd and call out whoever.
I bring a team of comedians, so I'm like the coach, I'm the manager, and I'm like, looks like we're going to put in you, and you tonight.
Yeah. You got to switch the lineup. Oh, there you go.
Which is what
that's
you guys
basically
are doing.
what a producer and a host is. Like, they just come in, they go, they want this, and then the fucking comedians come in and do the work.
And also, I'd say, I mean, for me, the idea of like, I don't think about what the audience wants. And I'm glad to be at the point. In the beginning, you don't know how to do anything, so you're like, this, and you get dozens of audiences, hundreds of audiences telling you like, yeah, yes to this, no to that, and then eventually you have to be the one that's like, here's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Like having learned from what you like combined with what other people are responding to. But now eventually the goal is like, you brought me to Pittsburgh because you're like, you've seen the things that I have done and can be like, you will make the people here laugh. And so it's funny, you get questions as a comedian sometimes like, do you have to change what you do based on where you go? And I'm like, no, like, because like anybody, even like Bill Maher can go to the South, and the Bill Maher fans of the South will go to see Bill Maher there. He doesn't have to all of a sudden entertain every person that lives in the South who would otherwise hate him.
And that's a nice place to be, where you can, like you're being put into places where you will succeed, and I think like to get there, you do have to like find your voice, be confident in that, and then find your crowd. And because you're not just going to start out and just be like, I'm gonna just, because that's what I get in. I'm like, I'm gonna just do what I want. And if they don't like it, they're just idiots, But like, I mean, you do kind of have to like adjust a little bit, like especially with my type of humor. I was very
at our level in general, like that's the thing of being in comedy for 15 plus years. You find your crowd, but like at our level, you just go in and like, there's certain things I'm not going to do in front of this audience.
Yeah, like I'm like,
you have to edit yourself.
Maybe I'm going to save the Jesus jokes tonight.
It's arrogant to think otherwise. You know what I mean? You're headlining a show in Jackson, Michigan, which I did last year, which is the birthplace of the Republican Party. Did not go well. I didn't, but I'm saying I didn't make the adjustment. It was my fault because I could have made an adjustment, but I didn't. I was being arrogant. I didn't know have the information.
Well, I don't think that either is quote unquote wrong. I would not ever recommend that somebody go so far as to not be yourself. Like you could pick.
But I could have also not bombed and been myself.
Yeah, I mean, they're like,
I don't know, man. I think that's a really integral part of who you are.
I fucking teed that one right up.
When you get to the root of it, man, like you are you. You can't not be you.
Yeah, I think it's important to know the parts of you that are funny though. Like you have to know the parts of you that are funny, and that's where I think for me personally, like my personal relationships are valuable in the sense that I understand what about me they like and and they find funny, but I don't go necessarily to comedy shows to do the jokes that I'm going to do with my friends because those are inside jokes. But I understand pieces of my personality that are funny. You know what I mean? Like, and I personally, I don't have a real polarizing personality, so maybe that's why I can just go in. I go in the show and like, I'm just be Ed Bailey. Like I'm gonna be Ed Bailey. Like that's all you're gonna get. Like you paid me, so I'm gonna be myself now.
I didn't want to see Ed Bailey. Well, you paid to see Ed Bailey.
Yeah, he was on the flyer. I don't know.
I didn't know what Ed Bailey was.
But I think it could, like, I guess it could if you're a different type of comedian, I guess you could have to look deeper into, all right, so maybe I shouldn't do this tonight, maybe I shouldn't do that. But for me personally, like, I could just do the jokes that I do because all of my jokes are about me anyway. Like, I don't really talk about, you shouldn't do this or this person do that. No, I just talk about shit that I've experienced. Like,
I think, John, you could learn a lesson from Ed. Just talk about what it's like to be Ed Bailey, And
there you go,
people don't have a problem with it.
You could probably do a set about, this is how it would be to be a young black dude.
I mean, additionally, I think that,
I can mansplain your experience for sure. I can white mansplain your experience.
There's a certain subset or there's a demographic that'll pay for that. Like,
older white people that want to hear about what it's like to be a black person without ever meeting a black person.
Everybody who voted for Trump. Like if you just went to Trump rallies and just did that set,
nobody's gonna believe that John Dick knows black people. I mean, that's just where you lose the whole crowd. As soon as he's talking about my black friend, they're like, all right, this guy.
Didn't Trump try to kiss like a black baby that didn't want to kiss him? Like.
If he didn't, that's a fine story to start. But also, here's the thing that happened to me a couple of years ago. I was like, I'd started headlining. So it must be, I think I started like headlining clubs in like 2010 or so. Mm-hmm. So sometime, I've been doing comedy like at least 8 years, 9 years. I think I'd been on Last Comic Standing, and that was the thing that helped me get into, like, help clubs know that people would come to see me and book me. But there still are people that come to shows sometimes who don't know me, like haven't researched me, that are just like probably some people coming to the show last night or tonight are just like fans of yours, fans.
Tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Depending when you're listening to this.
7 seconds from now.
2017. Yeah. But so I was doing a show at the Hartford Funny Bone. I was like, just a weekend of shows at the club. And I felt like Thursday night, more of the people are there because they know me or they care about comedy, and they're like, oh, like it's not just a Saturday night activity. It's not like, sometimes bachelorette parties more likely to come out, bachelor parties more likely to come out on the weekend, on Saturday, date night, just, people coming to see, just people who live in Connecticut are like, what are we going to do tonight? Hartford Funny Bone, Saturday night. So I remember there was this one show, and it went great. Like, the show went great. I was selling CDs after the show. I know when it doesn't go great. A woman comes up to me, and she's like, I just had to tell you, you were awful. I was like, oh, you didn't have to tell me that. Did you know that? And so I had a conversation with her. She was real drunk, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't have this conversation because I'm selling CDs to people who did enjoy the show. But and so I legitimately asked her, I was like, why did you? I mean, I know the answer.
What made you?
Why did you come here?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's not get to like, why is your personality? Why are you who you are? Like, what sadness was there? Like, who didn't love you? That made you?
That's
That's the thing is that like
you're hurting me. So who learned to teach? Who taught you how to hurt? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is like, because in that situation, like, I've had people come up to me and tell me they didn't like a joke because it was an offensive joke. They took, and then I'm like, okay, I get why you did that. But this just be like, you're like, so like, what spurred, like, I mean, you have to have a very strong feeling about something. And like, listening to your comedy, like, you don't really have like a lot of just, really like offensive, dirty, like humor. So for somebody to come up and like, I feel like, did you, like, what happened?
Oh, no. I mean, the point is, sometimes I do talk about, I'm very friendly. And so I can, somebody told me last night, one of the other, I think Suzanne, one of the other comics on the show, she said one of the things she liked about me was that I was talking about a lot of dark things, but with sort of an attitude of joy, which is like, I do, if you listen to some of my albums, like I think there's a track on my most recent album, no kidding, available tonight at 8, also all the time. It's an album. There's a track called like necrophilia, bestiality, and pedophilia. And so I do talk about these things, and sometimes people, I talk about them in fun ways, but sometimes people are like, I don't think I want to hear about that tonight because, look, my grandfather was a necrophiliac, and you're not talking about it from an educated perspective. So you're kind of appropriating my culture. That's the reason people don't like that. But so I do talk about, I'll talk about religion and sexuality. I'll talk about race and, social issues. Like, there are ways that people can disagree with the things that I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess anything could be offensive.
And gnocchi. You talk about gnocchi.
I do, definitely. Please, let's not, I don't want to start a whole, like, people need to listen to the show. I don't want to get in anyone's business. But the point is that this woman, like, didn't know who I was before she came to the show. It's like if I went to, if you just went to a movie theater and you're like, just give me one for the next movie that's starting. And then if it's a horror movie and you're like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. Well, then you should have looked at what movie it is that you were going to go. So I think, but people don't know that for comedy. People are just like, I'm going to go to the comedy club, the comedy show.
As funny. So
they don't realize there are genres.
Yeah, they think of it as their reaction and not how they're reacting to.
Or how they're typically, like, they get their comedy. If they're listening to a certain station or, or watching, like, they get their comedy from there, so they think that's
it's an American consumer perspective. They just, they want to, they're buying a thing and they expect to like it. And if not, they want the complaint or their money back or whatever it is.
And so this woman, I was like, did you do? I mean, you can talk to the club. That doesn't matter to me. I've already gotten paid with your money if you want to go try to get it back from them. But this woman, I legitimately, I knew I wasn't going to necessarily get through to her. Yeah. But I was like, if you're attacking me, I'm not going to be mean to you. But if you're like, I was like, oh, well, why did you come to the show? She's like, I thought it would be good. I'm like, well, did you know that that I was going to be here? And eventually, she's like, I didn't know it would be bad. And I was like, well, I didn't know that you would be bad. I didn't. And then her husband's like, hey, you can't talk to my wife like that. I'm like, she can't talk to me like that. I'm like, I'm the only one that has to be here right now.
You put that man in an awkward position because his wife's out of pocket, but he can't side with the person she's out of pocket to.
Oh, I understand. And
I disagree with that, which may be why I'm not married anymore.
But the size difference here, like if John is like, well, she can't talk to me like that, but you don't have a lot of like leeway. He might was he a big dude? Was he a little dude?
Oh, he was a very big dude.
So that was his opportunity to.
He could have.
That was his Game of Thrones moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spoiler: Theon jumped off the ship.
And so
that's fucking good. Hey, Buzzy. I'm not doing it. Edit that shit. I hate a game. No, you got to edit that shit.
That was bullshit. upset with that moment.
Yeah, no,
And you think I care? What are you not going to buy tickets to the show tonight?
I'm saying Theon.
We're not gonna carry it.
I had hope for Theon, is what I was saying.
Guys,
I hope for him.
I just want to let everybody who's listening know, if you haven't watched the most recent episode of Game of Thrones, I did just watch it yesterday, and the thing that was spoiled means nothing. There's very little.
I mean,
You don't
It is just a singular moment. It was
a moment that
Guys,
happened, and like
I've been offended by you two more than anyone that I've ever been offended by, so I don't give a fuck what you think. Second of all, you still don't know what the fuck happened.
Do you know? I guess one time I did there's an improvised comedy rap battle in New York City called Battlelicious. It happens every month.
That has to be paused.
And it's yeah.
But you could continue with the story.
Okay. Perfect. Everybody pause, go get tickets to the next one. It's monthly. My friend Victor Varnado hosts it. And the format is, it's mostly comedians, stand-ups, improvisers, sometimes rappers for real. But it's a comedy show. But one time there was a dude on who's like, he didn't do well and he doesn't take not doing well. And so he started for his final, exit, he was off the show. He just started rapping about and talking about all the spoilers of the newest whatever movie, had just every movie that was in the theater in the past year, it was not, I was like, oh, this guy, I mean, who hurt him?
That's asshole-ish. That's asshole-ish right
yes.
there. Battlelicious.
Oh yeah, Battlelicious. And there's a version. It also there's a rap battle comedy show that happens in L.A. called Turned Up, and it is. I think that one started in New York, moved to L.A. They're fun.
Ed's a big rap battle fan.
Oh yeah, but then there's nothing funny about the rap battles. They're all trying to kill each other.
I've done a couple.
So now, I mean, because you said there's gun bars, and then
that's all. It's gun bar. It's pretty much gun bars. What I'm gonna do to your kids. How your mom is a hoe, and I'm gonna fuck your girlfriend.
So now you can add funny bars to it, joke bars.
I went to a couple rap battles, not comedy ones, the actual rap battles in the rap scene of New York. I understand that the sentence that I'm saying it's the whitest that I've ever.
Was very.
So
that was very white,
fellows. There is a white scene.
I bought a few tickets to this show. Yeah. A couple young fellas were doing their thing.
From what I hear, Wu-Tang Clan is not anything to fuck with.
But I know a couple of people who have rapped legit. In ways that I can't guarantee are true because I don't have enough credibility to demonstrate to you the truth. But I did participate in a few rap battles, and
did you?
Yeah, and it was. It was fun, and I did well. I'm not better than most people who are rapping all the time. But I put, I've been writing songs and lyrics and rhyming since I was a teenager. And I have been, I don't know if you know, interested in words for my whole life. So it is something that I care about, and I listen to a ton of hip hop. I love, rap is beautiful, and I guess rap in general.
As a linguist, you can really appreciate all of the wordplay and that
both as music itself and also as a thing that communicates. Most of it's for a person that is interested in words as much as I am. It's really interesting that when I listen, I'll tell you what's interesting, and I think you'll agree about me. When I listen to songs, for the most part, even rap songs, I won't know what they're about. I won't get the message of the lyrics. If I listen to Eminem's new anything, I'll listen over and over again until eventually I'm like, oh, this is what this song is about. But initially it's just the sounds.
I think that is that's what rap is about. When I was a kid growing up, it was always we listen to it together and we hear something and be like, what did he say? And then we would rewind it. That was a thing. That's how old I am. We used to rewind cassettes. But it does take a few, and it's layered. So nobody ever gets to rap intricate rap songs the first time. It takes a few, and that's the beauty of it, is that some songs you're listening to it years later and you're like, oh shit, that's what and
that happened to me with even just not only hip hop, but even people you can listen to a song and hear all the words and know what it's about. That wouldn't happen for me with people that I loved. I loved listening to Ani DeFranco when I was a teenager, and still I think she's amazing musically and lyrically. But for the first years, it was just this music sounds cool. I like what she's doing with the guitar. I like these harmonies. I like these melodies. And then a song the seventh time through, I'm like, this is a beautiful story. This is a cool message. This is like 100%. And so it's so interesting, like to catch up with things like, I like it now for like double reasons.
I mean, that's what a song that stands the test of time or whatever. Like, does it hold up? Like, I listen to a lot. Like, as an adult, I'm like, man, I listen to a lot of garbage music. Like, it was just sonically pleasing. And I mean, I get into it, whatever. But like, as an adult, it's like, does it hold? Like, can you still listen to it and be like, yeah, I'd play this around other people?
Yeah, no,
like,
Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It is still pretty dope.
It's still fucking
how
like
we
that
do
is
it.
yeah. Anytime that comes on, I'm
I
like,
do need a
how
big
do
black
they
truck,
do it?
and you can get yours in a 6.4, which is.
That's how they did it. And it's still, you can still do it like
You know
that.
what? Now,
It also had a positive message of designated drivers and not driving drunk. I like that about it.
you're too. Yeah, that's you got kids. That's
Yeah.
how that, you. That,
Yeah.
That's how that sounded. You
Yeah.
have children.
It was
And
like-
I mean, I didn't have
understand
kids
you with that.
when I was 13 and the song
So
came out.
when the song came out, you didn't talk about designated driving either. Now
I was
you got
also
fucking kids.
not
like,
drinking, but yeah,
Well, some of us were drinking. At
yeah,
But were you driving?
yes.
Well, I did get caught in a stolen
BMXing.
vehicle. We
Okay.
were telling that story last night, so that yeah.
Understood. Anyways, the point is, a guy at a rap battle yelled out spoilers, and I don't think that what you did is that bad.
Thank you.
I always wanted to. I had an idea to mix the two genres of a rap battle and a roast battle, which is the comedic version of a roast battle, and have a comedian versus a rapper.
Check Sharon.
Oh, man.
Sharon is a battle rapper, and actually, he kind of does what you were saying. Now, he raps in the leagues where there are a lot of gun bars and he talk about killing, but in his perspective, he's just funny. Like the comedic timing of a battle rapper who's
that's
successful
interesting. But
is
I actually
crazy.
wanted the dynamic of an aggressive rapper who's saying all this horrific shit, and then a comedian who's going for the laugh, but also being deprecating. I thought that dynamic would be awkward and really fun if it was just some guy going harsh at a comedian, and a comedian's like, you know what you look like.
oh, so just have so it would just be a comedian
It's
and a
just-
rapper, and one would have bars, and then the other would have like
it's the same structure, but you're
just-
doing your individual art. A
Yeah,
rap
that
battle,
would be- yeah,
rap battle versus
that's
a roast
That's
comedian.
what I'm saying about Sharon. That every battle he has is like that.
Well, that's what the experience that I've had with a lot of the rap battle, the non-comedy rap battles even, is that rap is fun. I mean, so many rappers are funny. Like Eminem is funny. Lil Wayne is funny. Nicki Minaj is fun. Like these are, they're
timing
punchlines.
is
There's
impeccable.
timing, there's punchlines. And so that for me, I mean, I haven't gone to the gun bars. I didn't know that there were gun bars, and I'm glad.
You know he's not talking about a place,
a
right?
shot in the bullet.
I legitimately. So can you tell me what is a gun bar?
A gun bar is basically where you talk about shooting someone and you use a bunch of metaphor. I'm trying to think of.
He's
a
talking
gun
about
bar.
he got
Bars
bars.
in rap.
They're primarily
He's talking about a physical place.
Legitimately, I did initially think that you were talking about
I thought you did,
bars where guns were shot. But I now understand that
in
gun
the bar,
bars,
the gun was shot. Look up Tay
You
Rock.
talk about hood bars and redneck bars.
guys, I know a lot about hip hop. Now, I understand that bars means a couple different things.
poverty bars.
No, it's hip hop that only is take place at bars.
There are gun bar champions in battle rap. Like they're dudes that have.
People who only rap or mostly
Well,
rap about
most of
shooting
They mostly rap about violence
It's a
towards somebody
specific,
else,
yeah.
and
Understood.
typically a gun is involved.
And so my experience of it's not like Game of Thrones bars. Yeah, I got bars.
got bars.
GOT
What about
bars.
switchblade
Yeah.
bars? And we got switchblade
Whoa!
bars.
What the fuck? They got
John just pulled out
extremely
a
strange in
knife.
here.
They've had this. They got this whole brotherhood of the blade shit that they're doing over there.
Real
Race to the
dumb.
coffin.
How is that legal?
I have no
I don't know.
idea.
It probably is.
It
How did
probably isn't. We got
Shannon Norman got drunk at a party at my house and literally said the phrase, "Who wants a round of switchblades?" And he bought a round of switchblades, like 10 switchblades, drunk for no reason.
Where were you at a place where you can get a round of switchblades?
The internet? What are you talking
Oh,
about?
so he just was like, "Fuck it." He pulled it out. and was
online.
like,
Yeah, he
he
pulled
hit
his phone
10
out.
quantity.
Yeah.
A bartender didn't come over.
Yeah, he just said,
And
this is a
say-
switchblade bar, and put out a tray of switchblades. This is the 1997 Luger. Yeah, he didn't do any of that. No.
It's a
So-
pearl handle.
Yeah.
In my experience with the battles that I've seen, like there has been sort of like the gamut of it. It wasn't just people were being like funny and jokey in the way that like. I think comedy roasts, like roast battle and like the sort of the original like roasts were like people saying horrendous things, about the people, but also there was care underneath it. People actually did like know, respect,
Right.
love. And that was the whole that's I think part of the thing that makes like the roast a good roast is that people know each other intimately, say the things that would hurt the most if it wasn't coming from somebody who loved them. But now that it's sort of built up so that you do have people roasting each other or battling each other in rap and in comedy who don't know each other. So it does just have sort of the surface level of like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to fuck your mom, I'm going to do whatever, like in clever ways maybe, and hopefully ways that, rhyme and are innovative or are funny or whatever they are. But there is potentially so much more possibility, like in ways of like, the way that, obviously Eminem in 8 Mile, which is not a real, that's a fictionalized thing, but the way that he battled in that movie is not just to like go after sort of like not the lowest common denominator, but not just the obvious choices of like, here's how I'm going to take you apart.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those battles in 8 Mile, I think that was more the impetus of what battle rap was. It was kind of like, I'm challenging you. I could do this to you if I wanted. But now a lot of it is, yo, I seen you. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna clap you like this, whatever. And they just do a bunch of crazy shit. But you do still have that. And I wanted to ask, have you participated in roast battles? Because
I haven't done any roast battles. I've done some like roasts.
Well, roast.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I said
oh no,
battles.
it's
I
fine.
didn't say that.
Like actually at the Boston Comedy Festival, like maybe 6 years ago, like 2011. One of the shows, like I just moved away a few years ago, so I came back and like a bunch of my friends, like as part of one of the shows in the festival, we did a roast, and it was great. It was like everybody like wrote jokes, because they knew the people. Like a guy, Sean Sullivan, went through like he was super like Don Rickles inspired. He was a really fast guy in the moment, but he also cared about like the art of constructing like the sort of the perfect thing. Like he did all this research, found out like. Here, can I tell you like one of the things that he said about me that I like? This is why I remember
comfortable with
I'm comfortable. If you guys are comfortable, John,
We're
comfortable.
Good.
So
I have to go to the bathroom, but that's not related.
John's
to what
roast
you're
champion
saying.
of Pittsburgh.
Here are the elements that are important for you to know to understand why the joke made sense. The roast was happening on November 9th, 2011. And so Sean Sullivan, he says something about how he's like, I went back through like I like your past. I found out you were in an a cappella group in college. People like he made some joke about that being a thing that was laughable because I understand why it is. And he says I tracked down some of the music. I listened to it, and he says I think it's appropriate that we're doing this this roast on 11/9/11 because that music was the only thing that was worse than 11 9/11s.
Crafting a good roast joke is probably the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a skill that
It's very rewarding.
It is.
It's
I can see
really,
where it would
especially when they're really personal and you know the person. They're very rewarding.
Personal yet not offensive, but still hit.
Well, and to like what Mike said, our good friend Mike doesn't know Shannon Norman, who I think is the real roast king of Pittsburgh. He had a roast joke against me years ago for my 30th birthday. It was very simple, no fat on this joke. John, why don't you take some parenting advice from your father and die?
That's good.
My dad had just died months before.
I would say, for me, I also just a thing that I like about if I know the people and it's a fun environment like to be in, then I like going after a lot of people have gone, and then sort of you can respond. Like coming up with things in the moment is one of the most like it's great. It's sort of like these two. Niels Bohr, the physicist, once said, the opposite of a great truth is a lie, or the opposite of a small truth is a lie, but the opposite of a great truth is often another great truth. So like the two things that are opposites but also equally true about a roast is like it's fun to like spend time and energy and resources constructing the most perfect thing that you can say. But then the other thing that's true is like it's amazing to just hear a thing that was said and then in the moment have like the thing perfectly come to you that you couldn't have written because it involved what just happened with like 3 different moments.
Well, there's several things going on there
bottle.
because there's something beautiful about telling a joke that will never be relevant again. There's also when you're later in a structure like a roast show and you come up with these jokes that are clearly just happened. You're like, oftentimes you're put later in the roast for that reason because you're known as the person who can craft those things in the moment. So yeah, it's just like there's almost like like an ego involved in it. Like the later you go to roast, the better you are. There's a reason why Patrice O'Neill closed the roast of Charlie Sheen because he was known he was just going to go and do what he did. It's very cool.
So like roasting is a weakness. Storytelling is like a thing. You know what I mean, and like, so what are some of the things like getting into it? Because like, I mean, you know, I'm still in that stage where I still want to try things. You know what I mean?
That's good. That stage I call being alive.
Yeah.
The stage
Like,
where you try things.
So like, what are some of the things that like you're not as good at in comedy, and then who are some of the people that do those things well?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, I mean, the path that I've been on is like when I started doing comedy, I just wrote short jokes. It was all things that could go on Twitter. Like if Twitter had existed at the time, like it was just like a setup, a punchline. I would try it. If it worked, I'd keep trying it. If it didn't work, I would change it. I would try to move it around. I'd be like, yes, no. Like Stephen Wright once said, like he was a guy who like did, also like short, weird jokes that I would look up to him and like I wasn't like, I want to do that, but it was just naturally what I did. And he once said, like, I'll try a joke 3 times. And if it doesn't work, then I'll stop doing it. I don't think it's bad. I just think that the audience didn't agree with me. And so that was the way that I started. And then I saw like my initial thing of like seeing people like be like improvising, be riffing, be in the moment, be doing crowd work, like wasn't a thing that I did. I was constructing like a symphony and they were, improvising jazz. Like when I first saw my buddy Micah Sherman, when I first saw Rory Scovel, who
how good is he?
I just watched his Netflix special. Like he's one of my, I have so many favorites, but he is at the top of the game of being Rory Scovel. Like Rory, when I first saw him in 2006, like we were at a festival at the Seattle Comedy Competition, where it's like you do your set 6 days in a row, competing with the same 15 people, different audiences, different venues, different judges every night. Most people just did the same set because they were in front of different people. Rory did something different every time.
Wow.
He like would change the order. He'd add things. He'd tag. He'd be in the moment. And we're like, so many people are like, well, this is a competition. Why aren't you doing your best stuff? For him, being who he was his best stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was when I first realized, I'm like, oh, like if I write a joke and I think it's good, but nobody laughs, then maybe I just haven't communicated everything about it yet. So I learned from him to just keep going. I learned from Micah to be in the moment. Like, so I was like, oh, and that's how like the way that I write and create now is I come up with ideas, but then I go on stage and I just let them, grow and breathe and see what happens. And I love now like being open to riffing and like some like last night, like some of my favorite shows are like where I have everything that I want to do, but then so many other things happen that I don't get to do everything that I would have wanted to do. Or like, I think I did, an hour, maybe over an hour last night.
Well, I mean, that was a thing that people came out and said was like, they were like, yeah, we're coming back tomorrow. They bought tickets to come back, and they were like, of course he's going to do it because it's a whole different lineup. But then they were like, he's not going to do the same thing because he was just like kind of riffing and like off the top for most of it. You know what I mean? So like, and I think people appreciate it. I think people appreciate that the most because they feel like it's in the moment as opposed to we're just
it feels like their
telling
show.
a story.
It's the thing that happened for them that night, as opposed to, okay, here's a regurgitated situation.
Yeah.
Like here's an album that I got to listen to, but no, this is a show that I got to witness that this person in Philadelphia may not have been able to witness.
It's lightning in the bottle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can get my lightning bottles at my website. I bottle lightning for a living. But to answer your question of like the skills that I don't have, or that the things that I don't naturally gravitate to as much, I would say like sort of classic storytelling. Like, I have some friends who are like amazing storytellers, like comedians and non-comedians who are like, I don't know if you know The Moth, like a storytelling show that like
John does the Moth. Yeah,
I'm a Grand Slam champion.
A Grand Slam champion.
And it's the thing, like when I tell people like to be a storyteller is a thing, to be a comedian is a thing. Like there's an overlap. You can be both, you can be neither, but they're also like, everybody tells stories in some way, but I wouldn't say that. So I don't say I'm a storyteller. If you're like, what are you? But if somebody's like, hears me say that I'm not a storyteller, like, but you tell stories. I'm like, I do my thing in my way. And like this, actually right now saying this is the end of the story of you asking me, what is it that you don't do well? I guess I would say, let me tell you what I do well. And the thing that I don't do well to the conclusion of the story is tell stories. But I am learning how to be myself. I'm learning, I'm becoming the version of like, I like, starting a thing, doing other things, ending the thing. I like completing parentheses. But there is something about just the beautiful like simplicity of like I can't not be me. So like when I look at my friend like Adam Wade, who tells stories that are beautiful.
I love Adam.
Or like I don't know if did you guys know Mike D? Mike DiStefano was on Last Comic Standing with me and then died the next year, unfortunately, of a heart attack. He had been on Mark Maron's podcast. He'd been on The Moth a bunch. Like there's a story. I think he told it. He might have told it on Maron's podcast. He definitely told it on The Moth. But he had HIV and he had a wife who I believe eventually then did die of AIDS as well. And he didn't ever have it didn't progress to AIDS for him. He'd had it for like 20 years since he was like a heroin addict and didn't remember most of his like teenage years, his early 20s. But he got clean, became like a counselor. He had a joke that was like. So he's like, I did a show and I did great. And like an agent came up to me and was like, hey, do you have like a tape that you can send me? He's like, well, you just saw what I did. Can't you just, now you know it. And he's like, well, what were you doing before you did comedy? He says, I was a heroin rehab. I worked in heroin rehab. He's like, oh, what were you doing before that? He's like, before that I was on heroin. And what were you doing before that? He's like, before that I was 12. So, and like, it was amazing to see his comedy was like super, like he had quick, punchy, but like meaningful, real, like powerful, like jokes and personal. But then he also was an amazing storyteller, like a completely different like genre than his comedy. I mean, it was all him coming out in these different like in these different packages. And so that's the thing that I admire a lot is just somebody who's like, oh, this is a story. Like, I don't know where there are stories in my life, but I don't always know like, oh, this is the beginning of a thing. This is the way that I progressed. And this is the way this story ends. So there are a ton of people that do that I'm really impressed by.
As a fan of your comedy and seeing you last night, like, you take personal experiences and you use them as a jumping off point to go into your particular style, which is always language oriented, and you deconstruct these things and you go off on these tangents that are often abstract and like you said last night, cerebral. But like, yeah, you're not as beginning, middle, and end storyteller with all these like punched up lines, but you will take a personal experience as a jumping off point and extrapolate in your very particular way about it. Like nobody does comedy the way that you do comedy.
Thank you, John. Nobody does compliments the way you do compliments.
So how did you?
I really appreciate it. I'm
interested in this. So how did you? The physical aspect of you. When did that develop? Like because
I don't think it has.
When
yet.
he got ripped. Yeah.
I mean,
delts.
What I think tell me if I'm not answering your question, but in the beginning, I didn't move at all, and I didn't think about moving. I was just like, I am like a vessel for the ideas, the jokes.
Especially being having a linguistics background, I would assume that you were thinking more about the words. But
I was
watching you last night. The physical aspect of it, like really, it enhanced the show.
I really appreciate that. I mean, part of the thing, I've gotten more comfortable physically on stage. I haven't explicitly thought about it. Mm-hmm. Like I haven't, like obviously if I watch like a Chris Rock special, I'm like, he knows when he's going to walk across the stage, where he's going to be, when he's going to turn, what like that seems like
he's a robot.
I don't know how rehearsed. I mean, but it seems like it's very like, purposeful, very mindful.
Oh, it's methodical. He's methodical.
Yes, that's a great word for it. And for me, like I'm methodical with the ideas that I have and how I present them, if I'm methodical about anything. But with movement, I'm not. I've gotten more comfortable and more confident just sort of being in the moment and being okay and doing, like, I like that I have the home base of, like, standing at the microphone. The thing last night is I didn't because the theater is in the round.
Right.
There's audience around you everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so
what was that like?
I mean, I guess I'm happy to hear that it was received well because like I felt like I didn't want to give short shrift to any like part of the audience.
Right.
I didn't want anybody to have like what I do. It's sort of ironic because sometimes like if I'm in a club where there's like say obstructed views, there's like pillars or things, I'll sometimes make a joke out of just being like I'm like, oh, if you can't see me from where you are, like let me just move a little bit. So look at my face. Remember that face. It's not important what my face is doing for the whole show. Just listen to what I'm saying. If you can hear me, you're getting most of the comedy. You're getting 90%. Like, my albums are audio. Like if you're not watching my special, like you can listen to my comedy for the most part. There, like maybe there's some jokes where it takes look like a person did a thing or I'm doing a thing. But most of my jokes don't involve, like if you hear it, you can mostly get it. And so I feel like physicality can hopefully only enhance the experience. Like you get it. But so last night, because people don't want to feel like they're missing out on something, I think for the most part, or sometimes I've been like that, and so I assume that maybe other people are like that as well. So if I was facing 90% of the audience for most of the time, and there was just like 10% of the people are behind me, I feel like they'd be like, hey, we also paid the same amount to watch this show. That'd be funny to charge people like to sit in different, I mean, I guess that's like the way that a lot of theater works, but at this particular theater, be like, you're going to see
very new concept.
But for this particular place, like, this is going to be comedian ass section, like you're going to mostly see his ass.
Yeah. There are women that will buy that. And some dudes too. They'll buy that. They'll buy the tickets.
Yeah, that section sells out first. We're like, I guess you gotta turn around. Everybody wants to see your ass.
I remember having a conversation with John a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember it, but about how like, because I sort of kind of say I just got up there and I just told jokes. Like I just wasn't.
Well, you just started off not even doing that so much.
Yeah.
just said pussy and dick and ass and fuck.
That was it.
I remember Dave Bracey starting. I was about a year in or so. And oh man, it was rough for all of us to watch it.
Yeah, it was terrible. I would just say,
pussy,
foul
dick,
shit,
ass, fuck,
but like
pretty much,
pussy.
Pretty much.
The delivery was just like standing there with a mic, and I remember we had the conversation. It was like, yeah, I mean, we've got to be able to move around because like that, just that's not going to work. Like given that brand of humor or whatever, like it's just you got to do something else.
It's all about figuring out like who you are, because there are people who stand and deliver the comedy, and that's
very well.
That's what you want.
That's Norm Macdonald talks about. He so to this day he leaves the mic in the stand. I mean, maybe not so true anymore, but because he was nervous when he first started to take it out. But now it's 30 years later, and he still just stands there, and never moves.
So he took the comedy and molded it to that.
Yeah, it's good to know your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires. It's good to potentially face your fears. Like if you're like, oh, I'm not into being physical, maybe I will sometimes to challenge myself, be like, I will do something. I will move around. I'll try to use the space. But also ultimately, like, again, another sort of like great truth opposite things. Like it's good to get out of your comfort zone. It's also good to explore. And it's good to expand your comfort zone, but it's also good to know your strengths and know what you enjoy. And if what you enjoy doing is a thing that people enjoy seeing, then why? I mean, it's like a band. Like you got two kinds of bands. Like let's say there's, a whole range. But some bands are like you listen to any song from any album, and you're like, that's that band. That's their sound. Like they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's great. Like they've changed some things, but that is who they are. And then you got some bands that like every album, you're like, wow, they're trying a different thing. Like because they're like, why would I want to do the same thing? And like the same thing. There's another quote I like. It's rep by a poet named Robert Haas, I think. It's repetition makes us feel secure. Variation makes us feel free. And so security and freedom are sort of like these two, again, opposing forces that are both valuable. It's good to feel secure. It's good to feel free. And so if you can do both things, if you can do some things that are repetitive, but, like playing the same kind of music, but then doing them with new lyrics or in new ways or with new instrumentation or new something, if you can bring newness and have, sort of be beholden to, your roots, have your roots and also have your growth so that you can do both.
I do believe even in that though, that like say you are like, and that's great, like it's still in the creative vein. I think that as long as you're creating, you still feel a certain form of freedom.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like but then again, once it becomes, I don't know how it feels to be in say like a Jay Leno or like a
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Like
Please
where
do
like
now.
you're kind of now you've gotten to this point where the thing that you do makes money and you're afraid to kind of like go out of. So like, yeah, you're doing what you love and like you're, what I mean? But like, it's now like, yeah, maybe I want to go fucking sing or some shit like that. And they're like, you're not a singer. You're a comedian. Stick to it, like.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is, number one, I advocate not doing anything out of fear. So if you fear, like, especially, I mean, obviously, at certain points, if you fear not having enough money to pay your rent and get food right now, then yeah, pay attention to that. But for Jay Leno, like specifically, or a Jay Leno, if you have enough money, like at a certain point, like if you are that successful, you could stop doing everything and live on the money that you have for the rest of your life. At that point, I think not growing and changing, not striving to do different things or try things, like I would continue. If I had millions of dollars, I would try lots of things.
Yeah.
is what, and I would advocate if you have millions of dollars and you're a creator, if you're an artist, like try things.
But is there a point where like you get to try whatever you want and then you hit this thing and then they're like, all right, stay to get to that? Like, is there like, what's that middle ground like where it's like, I don't have millions, but I'm also doing well and I'm afraid to kind of deviate until you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, here's the thing. I'm not the best person to ask this to because I'm not afraid to deviate. All I do is I don't deviate from deviating.
Nice.
Like legitimately,
There you go.
There are. I mean, here's the thing. There's some comedians in New York like who at the Comedy Cellar, like Dave Attell can go on at the Comedy Cellar, do whatever he wants. I mean, he wants to try new jokes. He wants to be the best that he can, but he's not there to just like run his set. Whereas like if you get past at the Comedy Cellar, like then for a little while, at least for me, I was sort of like led to, when I got past there, like after I did Last Comic Standing, and I got the impression that like it would be good for me as a new person there to do my best to kill every time and not do what Dave Attell does and try new things. Like there's other places for me to try new things, but for me at a certain point, it became like it's a nice status. It's nice to get past at the Cellar, but for me, if I was going to only do the exact same thing every time I was there was almost, to me, nothing valuable in that. Like, it's nice to be there. It's a cool thing to be a part of. But I'm like, if I want to be a better comedian tomorrow than I am today, and doing something exactly the same doesn't get me there as much as allowing myself to be something somewhere different. And that's possibly maybe why I'm not working there as much anymore, and why there are people who work there regularly who are like, might have a different bit like, hey, when you're there, do it. When you do what you got to do, be there. It helps in other ways. It does other things. But I always advocate like, have places where you can do anything you want. Have places where you can grow, where you can try different things, and then also have the places that pay your bills. Also have the places where, I mean, when I go out on the road, if I'm being paid to do comedy, you know, at the most paid end of the spectrum, like it's a corporate gig where they're like, you please don't say anything about religion. Please don't swear. I'm not going to be like, I do what I want.
Yeah.
Well, then they're like, well, then you don't have the job.
Yeah.
So if you're at the place where you want that job and or need that job, can use that job, then do that job. If you agree to do a job, do the job, but have places where the job is self-determined. Have places where the art and the passion and the goal, where the goal is to be yourself and do what you want. And even if it's just in the beginning, it's an open mic. You can do anything you want at an open mic. Nobody's going to be like in the paper tomorrow, I reviewed this open mic and there were comedians who just said dick, pussy, ass, fat. You know what I mean?
Oh, well,
and
that's all open mics.
And he was just standing there. Like, move around and say dick, pussy, ass, fat. You know?
So we're going to call back to, you give up the battle to win, the war or whatever.
The war is to be yourself.
Yeah.
The battle is to
get to the back
succeed in a specific environment.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, it's fine to have those goals, and it's also fine to like. There's nothing bad about like, but for me, the ultimate goal is to enjoy and like fulfill every moment that I can. Sometimes it is like, and sometimes I will have like, I'll lose the battle of an audience loving me. Like if at a certain show I'm trying tons of new things, like, just a 10-minute showcase set in a particular environment in New York, like I much prefer to have them love all the new things that I'm trying, but I'm trying new things. I'm saying things that I've never said before. Like some audiences will love it, some audiences won't love it. So I sacrifice the dignity or the regard of certain audiences. Like I don't know which ones they're going to be. I'm not like, tonight's the night. This audience won't respect me or won't know this. But some audiences, some people have seen me and don't know what I'm capable of. That's investment in becoming even more capable to be even better at everything that I do.
Well, that I feel like that's your logical background. There's the balance involved where you do understand, all right, there are certain things, there's certain, we'll say cash cows where it's like, all right, I'm going to go here, I'm going to get the money, but you still have the opportunity you're still getting paid off of your thoughts and things like that, but you don't necessarily exercise the freedom of saying, all right, I'm going to just go out here and just do my thing and try new things, but you still have, places where you can go and do that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think for newer comedians, that's a lot of like once you get a little small piece of success, that's the battle that you have internally a lot is where it's like, all right, so I've been known to kill rooms around here, but I got to get a new 15.
Yeah.
And if I go in this room and try this new 10 of my 15, they may not like it, and I don't get the reception that I'm used to.
Yeah. I was talking to Tim Ross about that or whatever, and he was like, like once you get comfortable, like hitting home runs.
You mean who hasn't written a joke in 4 years? I love Tim, but he's
like, you get to this point where like you're afraid to fail. I mean, that's just really what it is, and that's the thing.
Well, he's an extreme example of that because he's gotten so comfortable because he wrote this amazing set literally a year and a half in. 2 years in, and he's a brilliant joke writer, but he has this 30 minutes that he crushes with any audience he crushes in front of, and it's literally been 4 years since he's significantly changed it, and now so he's the way into the spectrum where he's in this
Jay Leno,
comfort zone.
The Hour or whatever.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
but here's the thing: he's been doing the hour.
It's a 30 for 30 on ESPN.
Do you know? There's a thing
but
called
Jay Leno off that. Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
His saying was when he would do his stand-up act, he would do the same jokes in front of different people every night, and on the show he would do different jokes in front of the same people every night. That's how he thought of it when he was hosting the Tonight Show.
That makes sense.
That's smart.
And the way that he, as I understand it, would when he was writing jokes and adding jokes to the act, he would take if he was doing a 10-minute set, he would only do like 2 new things. You do like kill for 4 minutes, try 1 new thing. Kill for 2 minutes, try a new thing.
He's robotic,
after a month, he had tried out, maybe 30 new things or maybe 10 new things 3 times each. And then he would have a sense of which one of those would advance to becoming part of the thing, like just growing. So it is
like
possible.
A small batch. To call back to this whole craft beer thing.
Logic and rationale.
Yeah, it's a small batch. It's like, let's just let this bubble and there's no aim. Well, then we'll try it a couple more times.
And to be fair, the way that, I think that makes sense. It's all a matter of degree as far as even where I'm at now and where a new comedian who has just written their first great joke and now I know my opening joke, now I know my closing joke, and now if you have a 5-minute set or a 10-minute set or a 15-minute set that works, but you want more, it's all a question of then when you're trying out new things, how many old things do you do to buffer it? How do you just do 1 thing and then 10 minutes of new? Right. Do you do 5 minutes and then just 1 minute of new? You can grow slowly and surely. And I don't have all the answers, but I know that for me, I like when I'm trying new things to just do something and then get in there because I'm not going to be alive forever, I don't think.
Very true.
And so it's a question of when you're alive, do you want to live, more in fear, less in fear? Fear is constructive sometimes, but on this level, fear of not doing well on one night, I think contributes to not doing as much for me in a lifetime.
I think that's true, and I think it depends on your perspective of where your approach comes from. Because it's now you're looking we're in a society where it's all about monetization. How do we monetize, right? So some people will take the approach of, well, all right, I have this 15, 20-minute set. It goes well. I can do it in front of a multitude of audiences, and so I'm just going to keep rocking with this until I fully take advantage of whatever I can get monetarily off of this set, and then I'll move forward. And some people are like, well, I'll move forward by becoming this person who provides this new show every night to everybody. And it just depends on how you want to look at it. I think both perspectives are correct.
Mike's been touring for years, and I have a few years under my belt touring, and I've just we're having these discussions, and there's infinite ways of doing it successfully, which is the ultimately fascinating thing, because you can be a Jay Leno who's unbelievably meticulous, like a Chris Rock, who's just every beat is completely mapped out, or you can be a TJ Miller or a Rory Scovel or someone like yourself who's doing an enormous amount of riffing depending on the room, the situation, and what had just happened, and it's all about developing individual skills and that's what you do in the first part of your career is you're just finding it out. Because I'm right in the middle of doing that and just finding it out. Don't ask me what I do because I have no clue what it is.
Well, yeah, nobody can know themselves like everybody else can. And also no one else can know you like you do. The thing that you just said, Ed, is I like that you can do both of the things too that you said. You can get if you have your 15 that works and gets you paid for a little while, you can that's the thing, do that at the places that get you paid, but then also hopefully, unless you're doing it every night, like find other nights, go somewhere completely that people don't know you, that don't care about you, and then start building that next 15.
It's
And
not
then-
hard to find
yeah.
places that people don't care about you.
Yeah. Most
Without
of the
question.
world won't care about you.
Just leave your immediate zip code. Nobody gives a fuck about you.
I was driving with a friend the other day who's a super funny improviser for the most part, and he does this a really cool improvised musical comedy show. It's like they put on a musical based on a love story that they interview a couple in the audience for like 20 minutes at the beginning of the show.
Oh, damn.
My friends Evan and Rebecca. It's called Your Love, Our Musical.
Your
and
love,
then
your love.
oh yeah, that's wait a minute, they're not improvising. Okay, but they just do that song all the time. But they then just create a love story in musical form, and it's an amazing, beautiful thing every time. Different people, different story, different music, different songs. And this guy, he also does stand up some. And I remember talking to him about, I forget what the exact context was, but he was like, "I'm afraid of failing at this level," and I'm like, but. It's the only people, not that who should be worried about failing, but once you're already successful, once people know who you are, if you're a celebrity and then you do something that people don't like, that's news. If you're nobody and you do something that nobody likes, like that's not news. That doesn't become like publicized. Like nobody reports on, like who cares? Like if you fail, who cares? Mostly no. If people care that you fail, then they care about you. And that's great that they care about you.
So I want to talk about podcasting because we're on a podcast, and
What?
like,
Oh, no, I have some questions about the podcast.
yeah, I mean, like, and when what John, you like, are you you and Ray?
Was that a question?
Are you and Ray getting the podcast? I don't know. I guess we're not.
What did you just say? I didn't understand the words that came out of your
Okay,
mouth.
because Mike's trying to figure it out. He's a linguistics master.
What did you say?
And he's going to be the one to tell you that wasn't real.
I'll translate it. John, here's what he said. So I want to talk about podcasts. John.
Oh, well, to that end,
I want to thank you too because I've been doing this for 133 episodes, and there's always a point where Dave says something that nobody knows the fuck he said, and then he looks at you like, "Well, answer my question."
you just decided
there
to
was no
speak
question.
Raptor for no reason whatsoever.
Are you developing a podcast?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of recording episodes with podcasts with my daughters. Yeah,
What's
Nice.
your daughter's name?
Oh, cool.
daughters plural. Aislinn and Guinevere. I have identical twin daughters.
Oh, wow.
Now that's fucking dope.
Well, they're 14, and the podcast is called Teenage Wasteland, and we're doing adult topics from a teen perspective. So we're getting into it.
You should have Lil Yachty on your podcast.
I don't know who that is, but we will.
He's a
We will
rapper.
eventually
He has
have
to put
other
out.
kids.
He has
Yeah.
an album called Teenage Emotions, and really, as
Is he-
in
how
the
old-
hip hop world.
yeah.
Well, he's older. He's probably like 19.
Is he local?
No,
Oh.
but
He's
this
also
is-
he's famous.
he's famous.
Successful.
Yeah.
You might know him from going to the movies. He does. Is it Sprite commercials now?
He did the
Yeah.
Sprite commercial.
I don't think
Doesn't
I
matter,
would know
but
at all.
but
Yeah.
the reason I say that is it's a genre. I don't want to say that was recently created, but it's being explored where people are really open to different people's trains of thought and how they
Yeah.
approach things. And like he's in the hip hop realm, but his ideologies aren't necessarily hip hop specific. Like
Okay.
that Teenage
Oh, sure.
Emotions album is totally different from what people think hip hop to be.
Oh yeah, he
Oh,
is.
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll, if you don't remember, or if I don't remember that name, I'll text you later so I can research
Now,
that.
please answer Dave's question. Wait a second.
He doesn't have. Well, they broke the seal. Seal breaker is a deal breaker.
Okay.
That's what we say.
I am.
So about your podcast, the title of it,
Hang Out With Me.
Yes. So you are, and I don't know if you're comfortable with discussing this here.
I'm
'cause we're
probably-
not famous enough, but you did discuss it on your podcast.
You gonna bring up his Judaism?
You are polyuterus, as I called it.
Oh, that's funny.
Because
Polyuterus?
The-
yeah, that means
what
he
I
scrapes
am-
the bottom of all of it. He can scrape the bottom of anyone, and he's in a
He
relationship.
scrapes the bottom of uteruses?
Now,
Oh, you didn't go to pit with me and my friends.
Nah.
Scraping the bottom just means digging deep, going hard on the
What
female.
is but polyuterus is a
That's
word?
not a real
No.
word.
No.
I don't know what word he
That's a
actually used.
malaprop where he's using
it's
the
fun.
wrong.
The word that I use to describe my relationship structure status is polyamorous, which is from the Latin.
I love and all that. Like I get polyamorous, but
Oh, yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. Now
Can I, if I may, do a brief impression of Day in this moment? Now, that's not a word. If that was a word, it sounds like it would mean many you to hold on a second here.
Oh wait a minute.
Uterus, you the man.
Yeah.
Yes, I am polyamorous. Happy to talk about it.
Yeah. So how does that even like? How was that a thing that you could even pull off? Like, how does that like?
Great question.
Communication.
I mean,
And,
it's
and
is-
greed.
yeah. The first way, if you want, like, here's the thing. I don't know if you understand the idea of being attracted to multiple people, but I don't know if anybody here has ever been attracted to more than one person, but it happens to some of us. It happens, and so
I fuck through a white sheet with a little hole in it.
doesn't matter who.
I don't
Okay,
even want
you
to look
need
at
to
the
chill
woman. I
right
don't even
now.
want to look at the woman. You know what I mean? Because
But
it's
the same
sinful in
woman every
God's
time.
eye.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Polyamorous. Basically, I was married in my 20s, and it was monogamous for most of it. And we did talk about opening it up at the end. She had also introduced the idea in the beginning of our relationship because she was bisexual, and she was like, I've dated like a lot of guys long term, but then after dating a guy for a while, I'll always want to like be with a woman. So could we have an arrangement wherein that is something that's okay within the confines of a relationship? It was the first I'd really heard of that. I was like 24, 25, and I'd been raised in our, mainstream monogamous idea of, society. And so I was like, no, that doesn't sound good to me. I don't want that to happen. So we didn't do it. But after we'd been together a few years, I was like, why don't I, like, what is bad about that? What would make me feel bad about that? Especially because, well, at that point, our relationship was sort of drifting apart. We were sort of platonic with each other, and she was a little depressed, and we were still like, we liked each other, but we weren't really connecting.
It was familial more than romantic.
It was. Like, I still do feel like she's like a cousin to me. Like, I feel like she's a person who I'll care about forever. But yeah, I love.
Ex-wife is like my cousin.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's what
I relate to that so much.
Yeah, and I mean, like the women, like my exes, like I don't see them like harshly or I'm like, they're people that if they ever called and I had a chance, like if I actually had a love, I mean, they're not bad people. You're just bad together for whatever reason. You know what I mean?
And,
My exes. I had 5 exes at my last show.
That's
5 of them.
that's fun.
You
I
are
mean,
in
that's-
violation of my relationship.
No, I mean,
No,
that's,
I just that's I keep relationships with almost everyone I've ever dated.
I agree with that, but I can't have 5 exes at my show. I never
that
burn bridges.
Would be, that'd be tough.
Which is
but, yeah.
apropos to you. I never burn bridges. Like, I do think if you've ever had something with someone, that doesn't necessarily die because the structure of your relationship changes.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to see. Here's my challenge to you. You don't have to accept this, but
I accept it no matter what it is.
I don't know how. I mean, it's a specific to it. I think only Ed Bailey can do this.
Yes.
Well, I
But-
still want to.
I mean,
accept
actually,
it.
no. If he doesn't, then you can. But here's my
you.
pitch is: whenever you record, I want you to record your first comedy special in an audience full of only people that you've been with, only exes. Like, no exes come to shows ever. No, they don't know anything about your comedy. But eventually, like the people that you're still in touch with, keep working, keep getting every person, every wife, girlfriend, mistress, side piece, anybody, invite them all, and it's called like.
How many do you think?
Well, time out. That's what I was going to say. What type of venue? Because now I'm being judged based on the venue.
Like a coffee shop would do it
if
at
I'm
Black Forge.
If I'm at Black Forge,
Yeah.
that's acceptable. But if I book David Lawrence Convention Center, like, I got some explaining to do.
Get to work. Okay, so
No, I
Saw the
want to
improv just
literally
on
do that.
exes. Like, man,
We're not
talk to your
discussing.
mom after
We're not
that.
discussing numbers. I stopped
Okay.
I stopped counting numbers
I wouldn't-
at 17.
I wouldn't
Numbers didn't
sell
matter.
out Club Cafe, but I'd fill it up. Put it that way.
I'm glad you can say that. I will not speak to that.
anyway, so since Ed's not going to do it, John, I would love for you to do a special with only Ed's exes.
I'm
And,
not polyuterus.
yeah. So to get back to your question, so my marriage was mostly monogamous, but by the end of it, I was like, I sort of started listening to like podcasts. There's a sex advice, relationship advice podcast called Savage Love.
Oh man, Dan Savage, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like reading his like articles completely like blew my mind on a lot of different like, I guess ideas that I had on,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a sex, I was like, oh, you know what, that makes sense.
He came up with the term monogamish, which is
Yeah.
like the idea that it really does for a lot of people, I think, give them, like, it helps strengthen relationships because one of the reasons why some people don't get married or don't make marriages last, if they wanted to, is that just the very idea of being one person for, like, when marriage started, it was only like people lived to 30, 40,
Yeah.
but now if you can live to 80, 90, you're like 50, 60 years, one partner, that's it, like, that's lunacy. And so the idea of like being where you don't if you're like, oh no, not just like every once in a while, if something like everybody gets to determine their own rules. So for a while, like I've had a couple open relationships where it was like, hey, we're together, you're my girlfriend, I'm your boyfriend, we're our primary partners. But like if while I'm on the road, something happens with you, something happens with me, like that doesn't have. So that's a structure that I've been in. Like some people want to hear what happened. Some people, the girlfriend that I have
that's the situation I've been in for years. Yeah,
I've kind of just always just in relationships after a certain age. I've just always been like, I don't check phones. I don't kind of like. I mean, like if it happens, I don't really need to know about it because like if it did, as long as you're not bringing me a disease back, like I'm like, what? Because if it's not an emotional thing, if it's not going to tear us apart, and like if you're in the girl trip in Vegas and something happened and you come back and like for some reason now like you're cooking and you're just happy and whatever, and I'm like, well, this is dope. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth.
That's the thing. That's a great attitude, a great point. And I'll also add,
I know Ed's not with us.
We'll get Ed's counterpoint in a minute.
I'm looking at some dude dicking down my wifey as a gift horse.
But you're not looking at it. But you're not looking at it because you don't know it.
I do it from a different perspective, so I don't go through phones and things like that because I don't think me knowing when it first happened is going to make me feel better than if I found out later down the road. Like if I found out that it happened, then I found out that it happened, and I'm going to feel some type of way about it regardless. So I don't go seeking out those things because I'm not trying to put myself in that space where, one, if you're searching for some shit, you're not in a good space searching for some shit from your woman. Like I'm going through your phone trying to find something. I'm not happy about it. Like, what am I gonna find? No.
Yeah.
So when I find out about something, I find out about it. Like,
so may I will now present my perspective, which we had Day's point, Ed's counterpoint. I do look at a guy dicking down my girl as a gift horse. I'm not going to look at it happening necessarily. I would have, like, if we had a threesome, me and her and somebody else, or if I just knew that she was doing it with her. She's attracted to men, women. Like it can happen. Like it has. Like we met a little over a year ago. And I was with another girl at the time. I had a girlfriend, but it was an open relationship. So I met my girlfriend, Catherine, I met the girl who is now my girlfriend, Catherine, when I was dating this other girl. I told Catherine about my relationship. I told her that it was open. I told her that I'm allowed to see whoever I want, according to the parameters with my last relationship, which was a don't ask, don't tell. So my girlfriend was working somewhere else for the summer. I had the summer free. I would see Catherine like once a week, maybe every couple weeks, and she was also sometimes seeing other people. So she was interested in my relationship. She was appreciative that I was like open and honest and communicative about it, that I wasn't just like, sneaking around, that I did have, permission, authorization, like this structure. And so for her, I didn't mind that she was seeing other people because I was also seeing other people. So, and I was interested in the same way that, like, if you have a friend and you're like, oh, you want your friend to be happy, you want your friend to have cool experiences, be they romantic, sexual, otherwise, like artistic, like spiritual, whatever it is, like, if your friend comes to you and is like, I have an interesting story to tell you, you want to hear it from your friend. So with Catherine and me, it became like that. I was like, oh, tell me about that guy that you're going on a date with.
Because you can't be everything to someone.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing is that I can only be me, and what you get from me is cool. But like, if you need something else, then you got to go over here. Or if we're in a straight monogamous, then I got to somehow maybe try to like fit into that or
in this situation for me, like, especially, I feel like most of the time, the openness of my relationships manifest when we're apart. Like I'm on the road a lot. Right. I have friends and sort of maybe friends with benefits in other cities who I don't see all the time. If I go to, Atlanta once a year, then I hang out with my friend in Atlanta during that week. And nothing is a threat to the relationship because the relationship includes like knowing about this and talking about this and being comfortable. I think maybe the fear is that somebody will leave you, but like now, like Catherine and I are like love each other and want each other to be happy so much that like nothing could take away. Like right. if she even if she falls in love with somebody else, that doesn't mean she's not in love with me because she's allowed to have emotions and experiences, and I want her to her life to be the fullest, and she wants my life to be the fullest.
Even if she gets into a relationship with someone or whatever, like you're still be friends because you understand that that's what her happiness is paramount.
In fact, in our
happiness is paramount.
In our, I mean, all of our happiness, yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
like her happiness is part of my happiness.
Yeah.
And
That's- all right.
in our relationship, so I met her.
It's not happening.
Listen, I
It's not
met
that
her.
I'm not having it. I just it's cool. It's funny to listen to you all, and it's not even that I disagree with what you're saying.
Oh yeah, it's not.
It's also
not
not
for
for
you.
everybody.
Your
You do you.
approach is
Yeah.
just so different.
Here's a full circle. I actually have a friend with benefits in another city who works directly for Dan Savage.
Ha!
That's dope.
That is awesome.
So there's value in that relationship. No.
Well,
Oh,
here's,
there's enormous. Not I don't know what joke you're making, but there's enormous amount of value in
Yes.
that relationship for sure.
with my relationship that I have now, which started when I was dating another girl, met this girl. We saw each other, casually in the beginning for like 6 months. She saw other people. I saw other people. My other relationship ended. I was single, still seeing a few people, and having it seemed like we really cared about each other, me and Catherine, who is now my girlfriend. But it was also, there was nothing was locked down. There was no terminology. There was no, we were who we were.
Right.
And we would see each other when we saw each other. And sometimes she would go for weeks without texting me because she was seeing somebody else,
Life
and that got
happened.
deeper into a thing. And then in December, she wrote me a long email about this guy that I knew she was seeing, who he wanted to be monogamous. And she said, she loved me, she cared about me, and she loved what we had, and she knew that I would understand this, and she knew that she's like, maybe I will, maybe he'll turn out to be a horrible guy. Maybe he'll turn out to be gay. Maybe he'll turn out to be something, and then we'll stop, and I'll have explored it. But I feel like I need to do that now, and I know that I care about you, and not that you'll always be there, but I know that you'll understand this. And it wasn't my favorite thing to. I was like, I wanted to keep being with her, but I couldn't make her not. I couldn't
Right.
make her. I can't control. As much as. You can only be with somebody in as much as they want to be with you, unless you're actually
As much as they're
emotionally
with you,
yes,
mentally.
Yeah.
they have to be, and you have to be. And so I, in a way, quote unquote, let her go. She went,
Yeah.
she left, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm happy to know you. I want you to be happy. That's correct. You know where I am. If you want to talk to me, you want to hang out.
And so that leave the door open.
that was so.
You know where I am.
Well, that's the thing with being non-monogamous. The door's always kind of open. You don't leave
Yeah.
it open.
People
Because
are-
I've lost many partners to monogamy in a way because
Where they would
because
seek out a
when I
monogamous-
start dating somebody and it's open because it always is with me, but there's either
All relationships were open at the beginning.
but like Mike, I'm very communicative about it. Monogamy for me isn't even an option, and so a lot of women at the forefront are very open to that. But they will fall off to somebody who's more willing to be more traditional
I
and
think
monogamous.
that's where my error in life has been. Because here's the thing, I'm with y'all to a certain extent. I've been in several situations, and for the majority of my life, it's been where it's like, look, we doing us. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be doing anything else, and I don't necessarily stop you from doing anything else. But I didn't explicitly.
You're not
communicate.
talking about it, yeah.
I didn't explicitly communicate that, and that's where all of a sudden, me as a man, the perception of me is, oh, he this, he that,
Yeah.
because I didn't communicate. But I don't treat you differently. I don't mistreat you. I treat you well. The time we spend together,
Yeah.
you're fulfilled in that time. I just don't necessarily seek to be the person that provides this to you forever. But I do get to a point like with my woman now where the pride comes into play where I'm just like, I can't necessarily see you being fulfilled by someone else. Like, if you're going to be fulfilled, it's going to be by me. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to provide to my woman. And that's why we're monogamous.
Well, and I think,
but I don't disagree with
Yeah.
Oh, and I think in monogamous relationships, it would help. I think it would help a lot more monogamous relationships if, those people kept friends. A lot of people get in a monogamous relationship and their friends fall off because they spend all the time together or whatever, and then either one gets absorbed into one life or the other or whatever. And I think that in that same vein, because not everybody is sex oriented or connect through that. So in the monogamous relationships that do fail, at times or end or whatever. I hate to say fail because
Yeah.
it's an experience and you grow from it. But I think that
I've
people
failed several.
Yeah, I think that people.
I have sexual failures like a motherfucker.
Yeah, I think that people should keep at least platonic friendships around so that because again, say me and my fiance, I can't be the same thing that her sister is, her best friend is,
you touched upon something as far as one gets absorbed into the other, and the older I've gotten, when I date somebody, the thing that I find most attractive, but find anything beyond anything physical or even connections that we have emotionally, is that the person's ambition. Like I
That's
have
huge.
something going on for myself,
huge.
and
Yeah.
if my potential partner doesn't necessarily, they're just working a job and doing whatever, and I'm not judging that. But for me personally, my partner needs to be
feel like you
ambitious,
can't
and
understand me.
Yeah.
they need to have their own thing that's going. Like for your partner, Kat, she's an author and she has her own things going, and that has to be a significant role in your relationship because you have your own shit, and then you can connect and be actual partners as opposed to one person being absorbed by the other, which happens I see all the time.
Yeah, it's always because I mean they become miserable and they don't understand why, and it's just like I mean you have to have something of yourself.
So we gotta listen. We gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
We gotta let Mike. You're gonna bring conclusion to this conversation.
Sure.
So let me that question. But
Answer all the questions that were raised in this podcast. Go.
I will, Ty. If you want to ask a question, you can. But I will just briefly at least finish the story wherein my girlfriend left before she was my girlfriend. And then for 4 months, we didn't really talk at all. I texted her like on Christmas and New Year's and like, hey, just like a friendly thing. And she didn't write me back for several months because she was in what would turn out to be, I learned later, like a shitty situation where the guy was controlling and manipulative and narcissistic and not physically abusive, but definitely emotionally, like made her feel small and wrong and bad, and eventually she got out of it and knew that I was sending her like a text a month just to check in and like hoping that she was happy, hoping she was feeling good, understanding she was doing a different thing. And it was ultimately what like she knew that I was there. She knew that I was still a person who cared about her. And when she got, out like she needed to, she then got back in touch with me, told me everything. And now that actually helped us like understand, who we are and who we want to be. And know, she knows now. She's like, I trusted you the whole time. Like I knew you were good the whole time. And then she was like, I was in a situation where I was made to like question everything about myself and my relationship, my ideas. And so I guess the theme of the podcast is like knowing who you are and surrounding yourself with people who respect you and care about you. Not that they'll let you do anything, but like if a person that you care about and respect and lives a way that you like to live, if they have things to say about you, like I don't care that drunk lady came up to me and told me I was terrible because she's not my life coach. She's not my guru. She's not my friend.
she was probably terrible that night herself.
If a friend of mine comes to me and says, hey, you said something that bothered me, and I'm like, oh, what did I say? I'm going to take that into account. I'm going to think about that. So like my girlfriend now knows that I'm a person who has her interests at heart, has my own. I know that she has them for me. I know that in comedy now, like you become that person in relationships and in personal and professional. You become the self, your own parent, your own friend. You have friends, you have other like support structures outside, but you have to decide like who you are as a comedian, who you are as a person, who you are in a relationship, how you want to be, how you want to deal with people, how you want to be seen. And to go back to the idea of like being a comedian, like some people are in fear in a relationship of their partner getting something from somewhere else that you want to provide yourself. Some people are afraid in comedy of like not having the audience think that they're the best that they can be, but the growth all comes from like, I would rather be the best comedian and have nobody know it than be the worst comedian and have everybody know it. Or somewhere, I'd rather be on the side of like being myself, being the best version of myself that I can, even if not everybody knows. I'd rather be in the happiest, most content, most open, loving relationship, even if you look at me and think like you wouldn't want to be in the situation that I'm in, that's fine. You don't have to be. You want to figure out the best situation for you. I want to be in the best situation for me, and that's what I hope everybody does.
There's no blueprint to this, man.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you bring a podcast full circle.
Nice.
Mike, let the people know where they can find you.
MikeKaplan.com is anywhere you put in MyQKAPLAN on the internet. You'll find my website, my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, albums on iTunes. My most recent one's called No Kidding. My special, Small Dork and Handsome, is on Amazon. My podcast, Hang Out With Me, is on the Keith and the Girl Network, keithandthegirl.com/hang. Everything, if you search for me, you'll be able to give me money and acquire my comedy.
Nice. And if you're watching live or you're watching this video or whatever, it'll be at Compton Theater tonight. Tickets are still available. Make sure you get those early because, I mean, that's probably going to sell out.
Yeah, this is going to be so. They let the people know where they can find us.
We are Drinking Partners. If you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspot. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and Google Play under Drinking Partners. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod.
Hey, we want to thank our guests. One, we want to thank John Dick for coming
thanks
through.
for having me.
Make sure you check out Race to the Coffin. They always got shit going on. John Dick's always putting shit on in Pittsburgh. He's going to be on tour starting this Sunday.
Yeah, starting in Cleveland.
Starting in Cleveland. So look out for John Dick Winters. And again, we want to thank Mike Kaplan for coming through to Pittsburgh, headlining our show at the Comtra, headlining our first weekend.
Yeah,
and dropping
1 year anniversary, man.
Yeah, dropping mad science on his podcast. As you know, Drinking Partners is the crew, Epicast is the family, and we out of here.
It's a fruitier kind of. It's not hoppy. It's not like.
Thank you, man. See you tonight. Thank
You gotta get a picture real quick.
Oh, sure. Here we go. Do that.
Like, it seemed like everybody looked up and looked at me.
Oh, no. That's just me.
Honestly, it was like a break. I kind of looked up, and then you just thought everything. You were like, "Well, let me explain why."
I
I was
finished.
like,
I
"This
finished
is
my
not necessary."
It
but
wasn't your job.